Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat box. I had a little incident on one of my past webinars where I sounded like a chipmunk, so I want to make sure that I sound crystal clear for you amazing ladies this morning so that we can understand each other clearly, right? So if you can type, first of all, let me know who you are, your name, and then where you live in the chat box. And also just if somebody could give me like a thumbs up, I can hear you, Jess, that would be awesome. So while you're doing that, welcome to the Radiance Gathering. I'm so excited to kick off this self-care Saturday with you ladies. This is kind of a different webinar than I've done before, where literally we're just going to be diving deep into your questions. So I wanted to provide an environment where you felt safe and you felt like you could receive my expert self-care coaching advice. So the times in the past that I've done this have been really, really powerful, and I've only done it with my own coaching clients as well as at paid events. So you guys are in for a treat this morning. So yeah, let me know. I see you guys might be a little shy. I don't see anybody in the chat box. So yeah, don't be shy. Introduce yourself. I would love to hear from you ladies. So we'll just give you like a few minutes to do that. I hope everybody's having a great day so far, and I'm just really honored that you joined me. It's going to be a really powerful webinar, so I'm excited to hear all of your questions. And the best part about these kind of webinars is that you're going to be able to learn from the other women on the webinar as well. So they're going to ask questions, and the answers that I provide, you might think, oh my gosh, yes, I needed that answer really bad. So just be open and aware that you will probably receive support from places that you didn't even expect it. So I've got my green juice. I've been feeling a little wonky lately, so I wanted to re-energize and get some green juice. So don't mind me, I'm going to be taking sips of this as we go on our journey. And I encourage you to make sure you're hydrated and take care of yourself. I am a Radiant self-care coach, so I care about your wellness and your nourishing. So I see everybody is still a little bit shy, and that's totally okay. So why don't we start off by let's do something to just really get us centered. Maybe you had a crazy week like I did. Maybe you're feeling stressed out even though it's Saturday. Maybe you're wondering, should I have even showed up on this webinar? I should be doing something else, right? And my advice to you is you showed up and it's perfect. And I honor you for being here because I know there's so many other things that you could do, but you did something just for you. So keep that in mind, okay? All right, so if you have never been on a webinar with me, when I do my meditations, it's really powerful. So I'm excited to lead you ladies through something for you to really tap into yourself. So let's get started by just, wherever you are in your house, or I don't know, maybe you're in your car, just getting away from everybody and listening to this, just get really centered and close your eyes. And just tap into your breath. Just become aware. Maybe noticing how your belly feels. Becoming completely present in the moment. Letting go of anything that may have occurred this week. Any negative thoughts. Anything really just that feels heavy, let it go. And let's actually roll our shoulders back. Just loosening up anything that might be really tense, any of that tension that you stored in your body, maybe moving your neck around. Any of that guilt that just gets stuck inside of us. Just move that out. And whenever you feel like you've done as best as you could to get out the kinks, just coming to a place of stillness. And just breathe. Let's place our hands on our belly. This is a place where so many of us carry our tension. I know I do. And just get present to your belly, the feeling of your breath moving in and out, the rise and fall. And with your hands still on your belly, just saying a little thank you to yourself, to this place on your body, your belly, that is your power center, in your core. So much of your own power and radiance resides in this area. And again, honoring yourself that you showed up to this call. And maybe noticing if you feel a little anxious or nervous to ask me a question. Giving yourself permission that it's totally okay to feel that way. And that by stepping up, using your voice in the chat box, and receiving my support, you are taking one more step towards your self-care, towards becoming the radiant woman that you want to be. Now let's move our hands from our belly to our heart. Feeling the pounding of our heart, that beautiful organ that beats whether we want it to or not. Beats without us even asking. And just get present for this magic that happens inside of you. And know that by you showing up on this call today, you're telling your heart, thank you. Thank you for beating. Thank you for guiding me. Thank you for getting me through all the hard times. And maybe, you've had guilty feelings coming up a lot in your own life. Just know that right now, that's totally okay. And today, on this call, we are going to let those guilty feelings go. Placing your hands back in your lap. Rolling your shoulders one more time. Rolling your neck. Just making it feel good. And then coming to a place of stillness when you feel ready. Let's take 3 deep breaths together to close this meditation, feeling completely relaxed. Breathing in, deep breath out. Deep breath in, releasing out. One more big deep breath in. And let it go. And whenever you feel ready, opening your eyes. All right. Wonderful. I hope that was really good for you ladies. I'm feeling 100 times better than I was. I haven't been sleeping very well, so that felt good. I hope it was great for you too. All right, so I see everybody is still really shy. That's okay. But this is about you, right? So remember, if you haven't chimed up in the chat box, then make sure to do so and introduce yourself, because no matter how many people are on this call, it's about you, and you showed up today to receive my support so that we can kick guilt to the curb together, and we can really break free from this feeling of guilt that I call the guilty gangsta that holds us back from what we really want in our lives, okay? So make sure, introduce yourself. I'm here to be of support. And so let's get started. If you, haven't introduced yourself, I want to hear, what are your questions? And don't worry if you can't think of any questions now. I do have some questions that were submitted to me through the form that I sent out for those who couldn't make it to the webinar. But I want to make sure that those of you who are here today are the priority, and that you are actually receiving the massive amount of support because you showed up here today. So let's get started. What are your questions for those of you who actually made it live? I want to hear how can I support you today? Just going to sip my juice until somebody has a question. All right. So since everybody is really shy, I will go to one of the questions that I got submitted. So we will start with Nicole. Nicole submitted a question to me, and she says, "Hi Jess, I'm bummed I can't make it to the webinar, but I am going with my boyfriend and his brother and his girlfriend, and we're gonna go exploring." Awesome. I love exploring, Nicole. She would love to ask about how I feel about living away from family and going home to visit. Ooh, this is a good one. I feel like I need to cram so much into a short amount of time, and if I don't get to see everyone, I feel this guilty feeling. I'm actually starting to dread this trip home, and I will be making, because of this, the fun and excitement is being taken over by stress and guilt of having to fit a million things in. I think you mentioned that you do not live by family, so maybe you can relate. Oh my goodness, this is a really good one. Yes, okay, so Nicole is correct. I don't live near family. So I live in Las Vegas, and most of my family, my immediate family at least, lives in Washington State. And What's interesting is when I do go to visit them, that's actually not where I grew up. So for me, going home and visiting family is not an overwhelming sense of like I have to meet up with everybody because I don't know anybody but my family in the place that they live. However, I can definitely relate to when I used to go home when they still lived south of Seattle, that part of Washington where I grew up, because there I have a lot of friends and a lot of girlfriends that I went to college with, and a lot of childhood girlfriends. And yes, it can be very overwhelming. Like I remember a couple of times when I went home and literally somebody posted, because I would like freak out and I wouldn't want to tell anybody because I would get overwhelmed by trying to meet up with everyone. But somebody posted to Facebook saying that I was in town, and then a whole bunch of other people are like, what, you're in town, I want to meet up. And so yes, Nicole, I totally get how it can be. And what's important in our self-care is being able to create that boundary, right? Of this trip is about you. And first and foremost, you receiving what you want out of this trip home, which I'm guessing is to spend some time with your family, maybe see some friends, make it a really joyful but still stressless situation, since you are going to be on vacation in some sort of sense, right? So my best suggestion for you is boundaries. And the way that I've made this work when I've gone back to Seattle to visit some people is I have created an event. So I've created either drinks or a dinner or a brunch. And then I've said, hey, everybody and their mom and their dog and their best friend, whoever wants to come and see me, I would love to have you join me for these drinks, this happy hour, this brunch. I'm going to be really busy while I'm back, but I want to make sure to see you. And the best way for me to be able to do that is for you to join me at this event. If you can't, no worries. I'm really going to miss you. And maybe we can catch up next time that I'm back in town. Okay, so that is what I would advise for you to do, Nicole, because I totally get it. It's super overwhelming, and it's also a good sign, right? Because people want to see you. It's not like you're coming home and people are like, oh, she's coming home, I don't want to see her. So this is good news, but yet standing strong in what you want and still remembering that you don't have to make everyone happy. And by you inviting them into this space of a brunch or a happy hour or a lunch, whatever it is, you are actually creating an opportunity for them to come to you, because the reality is you don't live there anymore, so they should be coming to see you. You shouldn't have to split off in a bunch of different places. And so I hope that is helpful. That would be my piece of advice for you, Nicole. So I hope that helps. Let me know. Yay! I see Angie in the chat box. I'm so happy. Angie is one of my beautiful sisters here in Las Vegas, who is an amazing woman. So hello, Angie. I'm so happy that you joined me, so I don't feel so alone in the chat box talking to myself. I love to do these webinars, but it's way more fun when there's participation. So mwah. Love you. Thank you. So Angie, I previously suffered from guilt, but cancer cured me of any self-guilt. Life is beautiful and there is no need to sit in negativity ever. As a mom, I've gone out there and lived my life, and because I'm living my purpose, my whole being is well, and this spills over into my life, including my immediate family. That's so awesome, Angie. Well, I'm so happy for you. And if there's anything that does come up on this webinar, I'm happy to help support you if there are just like little festering guilty things. But it sounds like you are doing amazing, so I'm so happy to hear that. Yay, Angie. All right, so what else? Make sure put your questions in the chat box, because I want to support you ladies on this call. So let's do this, yes? All right, so while you guys are being shy still, I will go back to another question that I got submitted. And it was actually from a guy, which is pretty cool. So Mike is his name. And Mike says, as a man who is very supportive of his wife and all women around him, yay, Mike, we love you for that. What can I do to help lessen the amount of guilt my wife and other women have? Whew, yeah, so this is a big one. And first of all, thank you, Mike, because we need more men like you who are just willing to go there with us and willing to support us through the guilt. Because what I've noticed is a lot of men don't suffer as much from guilt as us ladies. And it's interesting because it makes sense. So I've been reading a book by Dr. Daniel Amen lately, and it's all about the woman's brain and how our brain is completely made up different than men. And it's funny because I kind of knew this, but I didn't actually know that like the size of our different parts of our brains are different, and that just there's so much stuff that's different. One of the main parts that's different is our prefrontal cortex. So he calls it our PFC, prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain up front that actually controls empathy, and it controls emotions. And it also can make us worry more, right? Because empathy is being able to relate to other people. We can feel each other's emotions. Women are really good at that because we are built to be nurturers. We're built to take care of babies, take care of friends and family, you know, and this is all very biological in the way that we've evolved as a people. And so, you know, back in ancient times, like if we wouldn't have had like massive empathy, our babies would have died, right? And we wouldn't have been able to be these women who are bringing tribes together and creating alliances and really coming from this place of love that women are so good at when we connect heart to heart. So like I said, the flip side of that is that because our brains and our emotions are wired to be more empathetic, we can also feel way more emotions, and that leads to a worrying mind, which in turn turns over to feeling guilt. So I love this question from Mike because what I think is important for men to remember and for us as ladies to remember is literally we are both just different. And so the great thing about that news is that because men are different from us, they are able, if we allow them, number one, to step in and support us through feeling guilty. And so, Mike, to answer your question, the way that you can begin to start this conversation with your wife is actually first by asking for her permission. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things that I teach my coaching clients when it comes to conversations like this that are a little bit sensitive. And, you know, maybe she's going through a lot emotionally and you're kind of barging in there trying to fix things, because that's what men do. And women tend to do it too, by the way, especially my client, which is usually career-driven, high-powered women. We're so used to just like solving problems and getting in there and living in corporate America where we have to be like that most of the time, unfortunately. And so the first step to entering into supporting women in their guilt is to actually ask permission so that she feels safe to open up and receive that support. And you could do that, Mike, by saying something like, hey, babe, I noticed that you might be feeling really guilty about X, Y, or Z. I'm wondering if you might be open to me supporting you in that. Okay, so that's the first step that you can take to breaching this conversation. And let me tell you, I was going to say ideal, but it is absolutely necessary for you to take that first step, because if you don't have her permission and you're just barging in there trying to support, nothing's going to happen. She's going to feel like you are not understanding her. Okay, so once you get her buy-in to support her, the next thing you could say is just, you know, hey, do you maybe want to talk about this guilt with me? Women process their emotions by talking. They process their thoughts and their feelings by connecting with other people. And men are a great support in this because you tend to not talk back. which is really important, okay, to stay in that sense of how you usually communicate as a man and not try to fix things, but just being quiet and listening. And women, we can do this for each other too, you know, so many times we try to kind of like interrupt and like, oh yeah, and like it's a great conversation, but the woman who's going through guilt doesn't feel fully heard. So the best thing you can do to support somebody who's feeling guilty is to just listen. So if she agrees to share with you and you are sitting there listening and she's going through a lot of pain, the best thing that you can do after that is acknowledge the guilt that she's going through by saying, oh my gosh, you know, sweetie, I am so sorry. That sounds really painful. That sounds like really hard. And here's the thing. You don't actually have to feel like it would be hard for you. But what you do need to do is acknowledge what she's going through so that she feels seen and heard. No matter what you think about the situation, you might be sitting there, you know, the back of your brain thinking, God, like I wouldn't feel guilty about that. Well, that's great, but she does, okay? So that's really the third step to beginning to support your wife, Mike, in these feelings of guilt. And you can do it for anybody. You can do it for your sister or your mom. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Of course, always coming from a place of love and understanding is going to be your best bet in those conversations. So that is my advice for Mike, you really helping to support women. There's so much more that we could go into to dive deep, but I think just giving you those 3 steps is really important because without those 3 of, you know, first getting permission to enter into a conversation, asking her if she would like to just be heard and vent, and then third, really acknowledging her feelings and where she's coming from. That's a good start for you, Mike. And thank you again for asking that question. I think for the women that are on this call, it's important to hear that men are actually wanting to support us as well. So Angie, Alex says you look beautiful. Oh, awesome, Alex. Alex is Angie's beautiful, amazing son. Hi, Alex. Thank you guys for being on this chat with me. All right, so what else? Anything else or anything that maybe, you know, some of your friends are going through that you would love me to answer right now, and then you can send them the recording of this webinar. I am really here to just serve and help answer some of those deeper questions. So I'm going to take another sip of my juice. If you guys live in Las Vegas, this is a brand new juice place called Press Juicery. It's not 100% organic, which I'm not a fan of, but they say it's mostly organic and it's all non-GMO, and it's pretty good. It's not bad. All right, so if you guys are still being shy, what I'm going to do is actually go find those questions that I gave as samples for this webinar, and I can just start asking those. How does that sound? So give me 1 second, because I'm going to go to my email and try to find those questions. Okay, perfect. I found it. Great. All right, so the first question that I gave is a sample of things that you could ask me. I said, whenever I carve out time for myself, I end up feeling like I should be doing something more productive. Do you have tips on how to enjoy my me time without needing to accomplish something? Yes. Okay, so obviously I wrote this question, right? So it's no problem for me to answer because I came up with it. But yeah, so the background of this question is so often we make this big decision like, yes, I'm finally going to rest. I'm finally going to take care of myself. I'm going to go get a massage, or maybe just like read and snuggle up on the couch with some tea, or I'm going to go and actually connect with my friends. So that's first one thing that I want to clear up is that me time does not have to be alone time. Okay. Me time, the way that I define me time and self-care, is really anything that is putting you in your pleasure and allowing you to take care of whatever needs you are having right there in that very moment. Okay, so it's doing what you want, when you want, how you want to do it. It's really stepping into this place where you're like, I'm in charge of my life. This is what I want to do. Okay, that is radiant self-care. So when you are doing something that you really want to do, like me time, self-care, and you start to feel like you should be productive, the first thing that you should notice is, why are you feeling that way? And usually it's actually not our own desire or thought, right? You made the decision to actually take some me time for yourself. You made the decision to start receiving self-care in that moment. And then all of a sudden, boom, when you like get these anxious feelings, like I need to get up, I need to do something, like you go into busy bee mode, it's usually not because you actually want to do that. It's because we have been so conditioned that taking care of ourselves means being lazy. Okay, so let me share with you, like I still have this come up, and I know it's deeply rooted in the feminine side of my family, my mom, and then her mother. And what I noticed a few Christmases ago when I was really starting to begin teaching this self-care stuff and exploring it for myself, is I started to notice how many times when we were just sitting around as a family, my mom or my grandmother would say, oh man, I am just so lazy, aren't I? Like, I should really get up and do something. So it's like, do something. We say this, right? We say like we should get up and just do something. It's like we want to be busy just to be busy. And this is not good because when you're ignoring what you actually want to do in the moment, what feels good, and you're pushing yourself to achieve something or accomplish something, you're actually taking away that nourishment, that moment where you can receive to fill your own cup that will benefit you in the moment when you actually do want to be productive and you do want to accomplish something. In that moment, you won't be coming from a place of being full because you've just continued to push, and that cup has gone down, down, down. So my biggest advice when you start to feel feelings of guilt, when you're sitting around and feeling like you should be productive, is to ask yourself, well, are those feelings really even what I want in the moment? Do I want to be being productive right now? And then my next piece of advice in that is for you to ask, if I didn't do that thing, let's say it's the dishes, or I don't know, like I always go to cleaning because that just seems like the thing, right? Or maybe you feel like you should be working on stuff for your job on the weekends, and like you'd plan to have a self-care weekend, but you are doing these activities and you're just feeling super guilty about it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I need to like get up and do something. Like all this sitting around is not okay. So there's a couple things to this. Sometimes we like to distract ourselves from what actually taking care of ourselves might mean. It's like self-sabotage, right? So you know that actually this is going to fill you up, but instead you're like a part of you that doesn't want you to be fully happy because you're afraid of what that might look like, is like, go do something, you know, just like that'll make you more productive and make you feel better instead of just sitting here and being with your thoughts or like really nourishing yourself. So there can be a little bit of that. So ask yourself that question. And then there can also be a little bit of like, you should ask your question. You should ask yourself, like, what would happen if I didn't do that thing? Like, what's the worst that could happen? So the prime example that I can give you for this is one of my clients. When we got back from Bali, we were having a call, and her big challenge was that she was struggling being in this place of actually just letting go now that she was back in her environment, her home environment, because her home environment to her meant like she should be cleaning, she should be doing something. But in Bali, we released a lot of that. And so when she got back, she was struggling with kind of like, How do I keep this balance in my life? And the funny thing is that what was really getting to her was that there were clothes on a drying rack that she hadn't put away, and she kept walking by it and feeling guilty for actually not putting away the clothes. She wasn't sure why she hadn't put away the clothes. So I had asked her, well, what's the worst that could happen if those clothes stayed there? And she actually started laughing, because when we ask ourselves these kind of questions, sometimes it's really funny. It's like, well, the worst that could happen is the clothes stay there. Like, what is the worst that could happen, right? Sometimes when we look a little bit deeper, like, we can actually laugh, and then we can get back to doing what's most important, which is taking care of ourselves. The clothes will be fine, okay? Like, the whole reason sometimes why we feel like we should do these things is kind of laughable and silly. So that is my answer to that question. All right. What other questions do you guys have for me? Chime up in the chat box. I'm going to just move on while you have some time to think. All right. So the next question that I suggested you could ask is, I have a tough time telling people I love no. Any ideas on how I can speak up in a loving way when I don't feel like saying yes? All right, this is a big one for me, a big one for a lot of us, but really, like, my own personal story is that I was a yes girl. Like, I could not say no. I didn't know how to say no. And if I did say no, I ended up feeling guilty about it. So what I've noticed with a lot of women is that we're really afraid to say no. And this is my own story too, because we're afraid that we're going to disappoint that person. We're on a deeper level afraid that if we say no to them, that they won't love us anymore, that they won't want to be friends with us, they won't want to be in a relationship with us, they will disown us, that because we're not being kind of this like perfect friend or perfect lover, if we say no, that everything is just going to go to shit, right? So what I suggest most for women when they're having a hard time saying no is to remind themselves, number one, that when we say no to something, we're actually opening up a whole other conversation of what we are saying yes to. Okay, so that's like the first step when you're struggling with saying no, is when you say no to something, how are you actually saying yes to yourself? Okay, and then remind yourself, when you say yes to yourself, maybe it's just taking a night in where you need to nurture your own needs. Like, what is the benefit of that? Maybe it's a choice between going out with friends and staying home, and you are feeling guilty because your friends really need you. They want you there, right? They're so excited and they're like, we love you and we're going to miss you so much. And like, women can tend to do this, right? It's like, oh, don't stay home. Don't, like, come out with us. And sometimes, granted, it's very important to like kind of drag that friend out that's been, hibernating. But it's more important for you to remember what you need. And in this circumstance, if you really want to stay home, what I suggest saying to these friends is, number one, just coming from a place of like gratitude, because them wanting you to come out is them loving you, right? But you need to love yourself. And so remembering to say something like this to your friends is really important. You could say, hey guys, I really, really appreciate you inviting me out. It means so much to me. I know that we have a lot of fun together, but tonight I'm going to have to say no. I really need to take care of myself. Okay, so that is one way to say no and really feel good about it, because number one, you're appreciating them, but number two, you're creating a boundary and you're not getting sucked into, I should go and do this thing because that's what they want me to do. Okay, so that's one scenario. Another way to say no that I found is really powerful, and this is usually with people who aren't as close to you, maybe, is to still come from that place of love, but you don't have to explain yourself. Okay, so this is something that really bogged me down, was explaining myself out of my no. So I would say something like, no, I wouldn't even say no, actually. I'd say, I don't know, I'm really just not feeling like that. And then the person would, say, oh, you should really come and it's going to be great. Or, won't you really do this for me? Like, it would mean so much. And we can get sucked into like talking ourselves out of it, of like, oh, well, no, but maybe, okay, well, actually, like, yeah, sure, why not? Do you see where you talk yourself out of it and then you end up saying yes to something that you really wanted to say no to? So what I suggest is to really keep these kind of no's short. Okay, and you can still come from a place of love in it. You can say something like, thank you so much for the offer. I'm going to have to decline at this time. You don't even have to say at this time if you don't want. But for me, sometimes that feels good. I'm going to have to decline at this time because I have other plans. And you don't have to tell them what your plans are. Your plans could be staying home. And that is plan enough. I know I used to feel really guilty about like, well, I don't have plans, but guess what? Self-care is plans. You scheduling that self-care into your calendar or the me time, that is a plan. And you don't have to explain that. Okay. So make sure you give your strong no's, come from a place of love, create that boundary, and you remind yourself when you say no, what you are saying yes to. Angie says, another way to say no is, that doesn't work for me, but maybe this, fill in the blank. Yeah, right. You can negotiate. You could say exactly something like, I actually don't like to use the word but. I like to say, maybe that doesn't work for me. And what do you think about us doing this at another time? Here's what does work for me. So that totally, Angie, thank you so much. That's a really good point that I missed. So thank you. Okay, so what else, guys? What else can I answer? So let's go on to the next question. I feel responsible for my friends and loved ones. They need me. How can I possibly put myself first when they are my priority? All right. So this is a big one that I hear from a lot of people. It's a really good excuse. That is that is the reality of this question, is that when you say, how can I put myself first? I have people that need me. That is an excuse, point blank. Okay, so there's no bullshitting around that one. What is on the deeper level is that you reframing your mind around what self-care means and what it could mean for those people that need you is essential in this situation. Okay, so the way that you can do that is by getting a deeper understanding of actually realizing what putting yourself first does for your family. So let's take, or your boyfriend. Let me give an example. So me and my own boyfriend have been coming up to this place where we're really kind of negotiating how often we talk on the phone. Because we're long distance. And so that can get a little tricky and a little bit rough. And like sometimes I know I've been feeling like, I want to be there for him, or he's been feeling like I need to be there for her. And so all these feelings of feeling guilty when we're not there for each other and we're actually, like spending time with our friends and spending time for ourselves meditating. That's a big one for us. It's like, well, I really want to be meditating, but I know we should be talking on the phone and connecting. So both of these things are very important, right? You want to connect with the people that you love, but you also want to fill yourself up. So what happens when you do fill yourself up and you do actually take time for yourself is that you come back from that time for yourself a better woman for the ones that you love. You are less stressed. You are more positive. You're more present in your body because you've taken the time outside of the usual chaotic, just being with people in relationship is a lot. It takes a lot of energy. So, when you separate yourself from that and you just come back to like your own center and fill up your own cup, you're going to be able to come back to these people so much better than if you would just keep on being there for them. So I hope that makes sense in the fact that like reframing your mind around self-care is essential when it comes to you lying to yourself and saying, well, I have people that need me, like I can't take time for myself. So if you really do still feel like that, like I can't leave these people alone, like, then what I would also say to you is get some support. Maybe call up a girlfriend. Hey, can you come and help me out? I really need your support with, watching my kid, or with, I mean, that's the biggest example, is watching my kid, or I can't leave my dog, I don't know. So really getting support from the women around you. And if you think that women won't want to help you out, you're wrong. We want to help each other. And when we help each other, what's beautiful is like, then we can do an exchange of like, oh, I helped her, now she'll want to help me. And that's the reality, is like, when I have had my sisters step up for me, holy cow, it has blown me away. And I am right there for them when they need me to. Like, it's non-negotiable. That's just the deal that we have for each other. And by doing that, we take care of ourselves and we help each other out. Okay. So if you are feeling like I literally just cannot logistically get away and take time for myself, ask for that support and do that. All right. So let me answer one more question that I wrote before we got on this webinar. I like to give to others and it's fulfilling, but at the end of the day, I am exhausted. Any tips for how I can balance me time and sharing my love with others? Yes. So my biggest advice for you in this whole conversation with balance. First of all, I believe balance is bullshit. I actually don't believe you can have complete balance. It's just not realistic, right? So I think one of the ways that we do sabotage our self-care is by having this vision of like complete balance all the time. Like every morning I'm going to get up and meditate, and every day I'm going to do this. And like we get into these rigid structures of what balance means to us, right? Like if you imagine teeter-totter, like complete balance is like this, right? But what happens on a teeter-totter? It goes back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes people have to adjust to, like bring it back to center, but eventually it's going to keep on moving up and down. And that's just a reality of life. Life is very cyclical, right? Like things come out of nowhere. And so what my suggestion is for maintaining this feeling of balance. So we can't actually maintain a structure of balance, but we can maintain a feeling of balance by being in the flow in our own lives. And what that means is that the moment that you feel like you need some alone time, or like you want self-care, gift that to yourself. Gift that to yourself. Don't wait, okay? Because the more and more that we push that back, the more and more that we start to build up this life of like, well, I've always been doing it this way and it's been working. So factoring into your life these moments where you do get the inspiration to take care of yourself, to take some me time, really follow that and stick to it. Make it non-negotiable, I like to say, like our pleasure is non-negotiable. My self-care is non-negotiable. So when I am in that moment of like, I need self-care right now, I'm going to take it and I'm going to figure out a way to make that work. And that's what actually creates that feeling of balance, is because we are giving ourselves what we need instead of depriving ourselves from what we need. That's when all those feelings of like, oh my God, I can't maintain like giving to others and giving to myself. It's really creating this beautiful like foundation of self-care that can be flowed on top of, right? So like you build on top of this foundation, which is your strong stance that you take for your own self-care. So I hope that's helpful. That was a little bit less of a specific answer. So I'm just going to read it one more time just to make sure. Yeah, any way to balance me time and sharing my love with others. Sometimes what you can do too is like schedule in beautiful like time with those that you love. You know, like my women's group here meets every third Wednesday of the month, and we always know that that's going to be the time. But here's the key factor: if you can't make it, it's okay. So that's where I think that's what I was trying to be clear on. It's like, you know, when we create these rigid structures, and we don't allow for ourselves to like flow within that, that's where we don't create the safety for what we need. So we have created the foundation for every Wednesday we meet up. So you could do that in your own life with your self-care. Maybe like every morning your intention is to meditate. But when you wake up, maybe you just don't feel like it. And that's okay too. Okay, so I think that's more my point. That's what creates that feeling of balance. Because if you don't feel like doing something and you're pushing, you're going to feel off balance. So that's more of a clear answer. All right. Well, that was my last question that I had written out as a sample. So yeah, it looks like everybody has kind of just been really shy. So what I would love to do is just tell you a little bit more, you know, on this topic of guilt and self-care and really feeling like we want to create this foundation in our lives. And it's really hard to put ourselves first. And we are so busy and we've got a lot going on. And it's tough, I know, because my own story is that for so many years, like I mentioned, I was a yes girl and I couldn't say no. And because of that, and mind you, this yes girl stuff started when I was very, very little. Because of that, when I was in junior high, I started getting massive stomach pains that were debilitating. So what happens is when we're going through things that are really rough and we're not living our truth, and I wasn't saying no when I wanted to, I wasn't being in my own divine radiant light, what showed up for me was stomach pains, massive stomach pains. And it's interesting because I always thought it was like some sort of food that I was eating, or, you know, I got an endoscopy to look for an ulcer and they found nothing. I went and saw a gastrointestinal doctor and he's like, well, are you eating spicy food? Well, I wasn't. So what's important to note is when you live this life that's lacking self-care and you're not putting yourself first, oftentimes what can show up is pain in our body. So I just want to really drive that home, because I know a lot of you might be feeling, you know, like shoulder pain or tension, or you might be getting stomach pains like I do, or maybe you're feeling pain like in your ovaries. A lot of our pain as women does show up in this area because that's our feminine region, right? Like we stuff things down, and they tend to reside where our area of birth is, because if we're not like actually living out our dreams from this place in our belly, then our dreams can get stuck and create manifestations in the body that are just debilitating. So for me, I literally would throw up. I would have these massive stomach pains that felt like stabbing knives, and I'd be curled over on the bed, and like it would last for usually like at least a day, like 24 hours. And this haunted me for my entire life until about 5 years ago, when I started to actually put myself first and figure out this self-care stuff and how I could live a life shining my radiance and doing what's best for me, and still loving the people around me, but being a better woman because I've been putting myself first. So that's been kind of my journey. And, you know, I had a wake-up call when I had what I call my cosmic bitch slap moment, where I had a rib removed at a surgery. That's kind of a weird story. All within a matter of a couple months that I had this massive surgery. I had a boyfriend who didn't show up for Christmas to be with me, even though he'd already bought a plane ticket to come see me and my family. So that was really rough. I quit my job. I started a new job. I moved houses in Las Vegas from across town. And then I met somebody new. So it was literally this cosmic bitch slap of like total life transformation and upheaval. So what I invite you, the reason why I share this story is I invite you to kind of look at your own life and ask, like, have I had any of that? And maybe you're going through it right now. And if you are, I really pray that like my story shows you that you can get through it. But what I want to be clear about is that I didn't do it alone. I had to get support. Like I thought I could do it alone. And, you know, I've been in corporate America for years. And, you know, I've been in events and marketing and media and, you know, most recently working for an airline, very stressful, high power, like fast paced fields. So I totally get it if you're just feeling completely burned out and like you can't do this self-care stuff. Like I get it. It's hard. But when I actually started exploring, it took me a long time to realize that I needed support. Once I finally got that support, I've been able to just completely transform my own life. And what's interesting is I'm actually doing more than I did before, but I'm doing more of what I want to do. So it actually feels less stressful, way less stressful. And because I've gotten the support through my own coach, that I've invested a lot of money in for my own self-care, right? Like I've put that forward and because I've done that, I've received like 20-fold in return. And I've had the support of an amazing tribe of women that I created here and that have just been so amazing and loving. And because, you know, do you guys see where there's all these different elements? And then I've also massively changed how I eat and how I process thoughts. And there's a lot of different elements to this. And because of all of these things, and then when I finally took the big step to get my own coach, I was able to create this business of my dreams where I'm now supporting you ladies in your self-care so that you can do the same thing that I've been able to do. It is possible. And through that, I was able to fulfill my dream of going to Bali and taking women on a retreat there. And then most recently, I've created this beautiful program that is called Her Radiance Revealed, which is for any of you ladies who are really desiring support on the next level. Support where you have self-care and success. So both of these things that I truly believe you can have it all. Like I've heard so many high-powered women who are successful say that you can't have it all, and it pisses me off because you can. I'm sorry. Like I'm having it all right now. I have an amazing love in my life. I just quit my corporate job, like my last day after being in corporate America for freaking how many years? Almost 10 years. Like I just can't believe all this transformation has happened. So now I get to fully dive in and support you ladies in what is so precious to me, which is living your big meaningful dream. That maybe that like stirring inside of you of you're happy in your corporate job, but you've kind of like reached that level where you're like, like, is this all? Like there's something more and you know it, but maybe you've tried self-care and it hasn't worked out. And like, you're kind of stuck in this in-between phase, which I like to call like, you're kind of in the chrysalis, right? Like you started to dabble in the nourishment, but it hasn't really worked. And so now like the transformation is just like waiting to occur. And all you really need is some support. So I'm curious, you know, if this is resonating for any of you at all, what I invite you to do is to apply, to have a conversation with me. It's totally a sacred process where we just explore. We explore, you know, what might it look like for you to have this big meaningful dream of yours come true? Maybe you don't even know what your big meaningful dream is, and that's okay too. We do a deep process where you can discover that through my support on this call, and it's really sacred. So I am going to put a pop-in into the screen where you guys can see on the side, load. You can also go to tinyurl.com/radiance revealed and find the same application, but I'm going to display it on the side. So you'll see it says, do you desire deeper self-care support? click the below and let's explore. So all you guys have to do is click that button, fill out a quick little application to have a conversation with me. I'll review the application, see if I think you're a fit to have a conversation about, the possibility of what might it look like for you to receive my support in this Her Radiance Revealed program, which is a 6-month container that is so beautiful that I've created, that also includes a 3-day weekend retreat, which you guys know I love retreats. So if you click that apply to connect with Jess button, you'll be taken to a quick little survey where you can just answer a few questions, and I would love to hear from you ladies. It would be an honor to have a conversation with you. What I do want to make clear is that I've opened up a few spots in my calendar for over the next few days, but I only have a few because time is really running out to join this program. But still, if you have a calling in your heart and you want to have a conversation, don't let that stop you, right? Like, you might already have a crazy busy weekend, still apply, but it would be in your best interest for us to chat first. So I'm really looking forward to connecting with you ladies in the time that I've made available in my calendar, and discovering, is this something that you desire to take that next step towards self-care? So click that button or go to tinyurl.com/radiance revealed. And I look forward to reading your applications. All right, so we've come to the end of our time together, and I just want to close with a little prayer. So if you all will close your eyes. I feel like moving my body again. So maybe just do a quick stretch for yourself. Again, honor yourself for showing up, and either showing up live or listening to this webinar. And just breathing in and out. Breathing in again and out. One last time, in and out. Thank you so much, God, universe, whatever your higher power is, for bringing us all together on this call today, for feeling joy in our hearts, for reminding us that we don't have to feel guilty. We can break free from this cycle. We can let go of that guilty gangsta. He no longer has us hostage. We are so grateful for all the blessings and all the love and support. And we know that it's okay to reach out and ask for support in our self-care and in our big, meaningful dream. In fact, it's better than okay. It's necessary, and we deserve it. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all this and so much more. Amen, and so it is. And you can open your eyes. And thank you, Angie, for all the hearts. So since Angie is, I almost forgot, Angie is the last one still on the webinar. So guess what that means, Angie? You win the 1-hour Bliss Plan coaching session with me. So I'm so excited to be able to support you. It is a $300 value. So you are the lucky winner. Woo! Angie's always very lucky, so it's pretty awesome that she gets to win. So thank you for spending this time with me, and I will reach out and send you the details so that we can get that booked. All right, loves, thank you so much for joining me, and have a beautiful, beautiful self-care Saturday. I look forward to connecting with you guys more so I can support you in your radiant self-care. Mwah! Big hugs and kisses. Love you guys. Bye.